Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Today we'll continue our reading, 4th canto, 8th chapter. The title of the chapter is Dhruva Maharaj Leaves Home for the Forest. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Canto 4, Chapter 8, text number 7. Priyavratottanapado Shatarupa Pate Sutau Vasudevasya Kalaya Rakshayam Jagatasthitau. Priyavratottanapado Shatarupa Pate Sutau Vasudevasya Kalaya Rakshayam Jagatasthitau. Priyavratottanapado Shatarupa Pate Sutau Vasudevasya Kalaya Rakshayam Jagatasthitau. Priyavrata Uttanapada Shatarupapate of Queen Shatarupa and her husband Manu, Sutau, the two sons, Vasudevasya of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kalaya by plenary expansion, Rakshayam for the protection, Jagataha of the world, Sthitau for the maintenance. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Swayambhuva Manu had two sons by his wife Shataru, Uttanapada and Priyavrata. Because both of them were descendants of a plenary expansion of Vasudev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they were very competent to rule the universe, to maintain and protect the citizens. It is said that these two kings, Uttanapada and Priyavrata, were specifically empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unlike the great king Rishabha, who was the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Text 8. Jaye Uttanapadasya Suniti Suruchi Stayoho Suruchi Preyasi Patyur Netarayat Suto Dhruvaha. Jaye Uttanapadasya Suniti Suruchi Tayoho Suruchi Preyasi Patyur Netarayat Suto Dhruvaha. Jaye Uttanapadasya Suniti Suruchi Tayoho Suruchi Netarayat Suto Dhruvaha. Jaye of the two wives, Uttanapadasya of King Uttanapada, Suniti, Suruchi, Tayoho of both of them, Suruchi, Preyasi, very dear, Patyuhu of the husband, Na itara, not the other, Yat, whose, Sutaha, son, Dhruvaha, Dhruva. King Uttanapada had two queens named Suniti and Suruchi. Suruchi was much more dear to the king. Suniti, who had a son named Dhruva, was not his favorite. The great sage Maitreya wanted to describe the pious activities of the kings. Priyavrata was the first son of Swayambhuva Manu, and Uttanapada was the second. But the great sage Maitreya immediately began to speak of Dhruva Maharaj, the son of Uttanapada, because Maitreya was very eager to describe pious activities. The incidents in the life of Dhruva Maharaj are very attractive to devotees. From his pious actions, one can learn how one can detach himself from material possessions and how one can enhance one's devotional service by severe austerities and penances. By hearing the activities of pious Dhruva, one can enhance one's faith in God and directly connect with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, one can very soon be elevated to the transcendental platform of devotional service. The example of Dhruva Maharaj austerities can immediately generate a feeling of devotional service in the hearts of the hearers. Again, I'll just read the translation. Swayambhuva Manu had two sons by his wife Shatarupa, and the names of these sons were Uttanapada and Priyavrata. Both of them were descendants of a plenary expansion of Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They were very competent to rule the universe, to maintain and protect the citizens. King Uttanapada had two queens named Suniti and Suruchi. Suruchi was much more dear to the king. Suniti, who had a son named Dhruva, was not his favorite. Okay. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam panghum langhayate giram yat kripatamaham vande Shri Gurum Dinataram Paramanandam Madhavam. Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Prabhupada. So today we are going to read this is like the segue from Swayambhuva Manu. The time of creation was spoken. And yesterday, Sandhya Mataji talked about Manu and the cycles and yugas and all of that. So, right at the start of creation, because material world was being created, just like when the ocean was churned and poison was the first thing to come, similarly we can see it had to happen. Unwanted things were the first things to come. But we can see the mood of Maitreya Rishi in these two texts. He spoke about those, and now he is very eager to speak about Dhruva Maharaj. So he's immediately gone into that. So this is our foot into the doorway of studying the pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj. And Dhruva Maharaj's pastimes are glorified here. So first of all, I wanted to honor the mood of Maitreya Rishi, that he spent like literally 2 verses talking about those other things, right? Like cunningness and all of that. He spoke about all the vicious things that comes about when the material world has to be created. Because factually speaking, everything that happens is under the control of the Supreme Lord, including the destruction of the material world. So the seeds of the destruction of the material world is already planted when the material creation is coming forth. It's all there in the plan, the blueprint. The material world blueprint has the seeds for its own destruction. So, but Maitreya Rishi does not dwell there. He immediately he says a line or two about Swayambhuva Manu, how he's an expansion of the Supreme Lord. Then he says a line about how not just Swayambhuva Manu, but his own sons Uttanapada and Priyavrata were also expansions of the expansions. Yesterday again, Sandhya Mataji spoke a lot about that. So he doesn't dwell on that as well, and he immediately jumps to Dhruva Maharaj. So a couple of things caught my eye. These are very short purports and there's not much to dwell upon, but definitely some takeaway points here. Uh, definitely Prabhupada is talking about hearing the activities of Dhruva Maharaj. And we know by the example of Lord Chaitanya, it is said that uh, Gadadhar Pandit would tell him, read to him. He would read, he was famous for reading the pastimes of Bhagavatam. And Mahaprabhu would keep asking him to speak about Dhruva and Prahlad, the two boy saints, again and again, again and again. So he set the example for us. And we know from Canto 1, Shrinvatam Swakatha Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtanaha, Hridayantasto Bhadrani Vidhunoti Suhrit Satam. So that Punya Shravana is also spoken about here. Pious, that is Punya, right? Like I was listening to one speaker yesterday and he was saying often the connotation for Punya, pious, is digging wells and laying roads, helping people, giving charity. And that speaker was saying actually that is not even true. He was saying that Bhagavatam talks about punya, meaning pious and impious, in this way. Pious are the people who have dedicated their lives in service to the Supreme Lord. Everything else, people who follow the scriptures and giving charity for their own benefit, or people who don't even give charity, or people who even are harmful, all of that comes in the category of impious. Piety that we are talking about, the Sukruti we are talking about, is Bhakti Sukruti. That is piety. So Maitreya has jumped from, he's saying, I'm going to talk about pious souls. Punya Shravana Kirtanaha. So when we are saying Punya Shravana Kirtanaha, that Punya is not about material piety, it is the spiritual piety that we are talking about. So that is one. Because that cleanses the heart. Vidhunoti Suhrit Satam. So because the Lord is the friend, eternal friend in our heart. He's the true friend, Suhrit. And so this is what I wanted to talk about today, is this, it's always intrigued me. King Uttanapada, he was so enamored by his wife Suruchi that later on, I don't want to speak about what's coming up later, but we can see how attached he was to this wife Suruchi, that he neglected his own son. Right? Like we all have our experiences where our own children are our dearest. And here is King Uttanapada who neglected his own son. How strong must that attachment to his second wife be? Right? Suruchi, she took, it's almost like she had taste for material life. And, there was a Thanksgiving seminar that was given by Srila Rompat Swami in New Jersey, central New Jersey in 2019. And he talks about response and react. Yeah, that's the title of the class. And he speaks about the enemies that were spoken about earlier in the chapter, verses 2 to 4. In one sense, it talked about pride, greed, and anger, cheating, cunning, envy, and all of that. And this second queen, Suruchi, she was the second queen. She was not the first queen, but she was the king's favorite. In one sense, if she had the favorite, she should have had everything, right? Like, why did she feel insecure? But Maharaj says in that class that pride and envy are two sides of the same coin. She was proud about her position as being the favorite queen, but she spoke harshly because there was envy, which was the flip side of that coin. The flip side of that coin is envy because she was envious of her stepson Dhruva Maharaj because he was the firstborn. After the king, the kingdom would go to the firstborn, which is Dhruva Maharaj. Now, I don't have further depth than this to go how pride and envy feed off each other, but we can see that they both are, the six enemies of human being, the Kama, Krodha, Moha, Lobha, Mada, Matsarya. So, anyway, Suruchi was that sort of a personality, right? But King Uttanapada's own son was Dhruva. And so that intrigued me, and I was thinking the same concept is spoken by Prahlad Maharaj in 7th canto. And he says that, let me offer my obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose external energy has created distinctions of my friend and my enemy by deluding the intelligence of men. Indeed, I am now experiencing this, although I have previously heard of it from authoritative sources. So Prabhupada quotes the famous Bhagavad Gita verse Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, and he's saying like learned people don't make distinctions because they know that they don't see something as an enemy or somebody as a friend, because they have a broader vision that Krishna, his expansion as Paramatma is residing in each of their hearts. So, but one who does not have the vision, what happens is we have a separatist mentality. We see somebody as our enemy, we see somebody as our friend. We see somebody as our favorite and somebody as not our favorite. So we relegate them to the, Maharaj says in that, what do you call that, seminar, that she was neglected. She was not just neglected, she was abandoned. And he says 3 times she was abandoned by the king. Suniti was his first queen and she was abandoned. Why would he do that? Because he saw somebody as his favorite and somebody as not his favorite. And it's baffling, but that's what we do when we see ourselves as this body. Anything that gives pleasure to this body, this combination of body, we see as favorable, and anything that is not favorable to this combination, we see as, no, I don't want that, we abandon it. So Prabhupada writes in that purport that as long as one adheres to the philosophy of duality, thinking one person as a friend and another as an enemy, he should be understood to be in the clutches of Maya. Later in that same paragraph, he says, in conditioned stage, we think that some living beings are our friends, others are our enemies, and thus we are in duality. In the liberated stage, however, the conception is that God is the master and that all living entities, being servants of God, are one. So this oneness again is not the Mayavadi oneness, but the oneness is in the mood of service, the oneness that comes when we serve the Supreme Lord together. So again, we went to this DT worship seminar and they were talking about how each one of us will have our our services. One doesn't think that only changing the outfit or doing arati on the altar is topmost. Everything else is also on par. If you're doing cleaning the dishes, silverware of the Lord, or you're cooking, or you're shopping, or you're cutting bhoga, you're cleaning the kitchen, all of that is serving the Supreme Lord, that Archa Vigraha. So similarly, even though the devotees are variegated, their moods are variegated, but the common core is that they are serving the Supreme Lord. So in that sense, we are one. So in that sense, we don't see somebody as different and somebody as less. We don't see their service as superior and their service as inferior and mine as superior, or vice versa. One may have inferiority complex, one may have superiority complex, but both are basically the same. Inferiority or superiority is the same. And the irony is that later on, as this Leela progresses and Dhruva sees the Supreme Lord, in the next chapter, he laments. He says, my dear Lord, I was under the influence of illusory energy and I was ignorant and I was foolish And you know what? I was, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, I was sleeping in the lap of the witch Maya. And under that, I saw my own brother as my enemy. And I falsely lamented, thinking that they are my enemies. Right? So, Dhruva Maharaj, so it was, you can see it was mutual, right? Like, uh, Uttanapada had favoritism, right? Like his one wife was his favorite and the other one was relegated and she was abandoned, and so was his son. That queen's son was abandoned. So he had that. Dhruva felt it, and he also had it. He also saw his father, his stepmom, and his stepbrother as his enemies. He saw that. And the beauty is that the bhakti process that we heard before, right? Uh, all the nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya, we saw that this bhakti process, it removes all these unwanted things, and we are situated in our relationship with the Supreme Lord. When we are situated in the relationship, we see things clearly. We see who He is, we see ourselves, our relationship with each other, and our relationship with the Supreme Lord, and others' relationship with the Supreme Lord as well. We see all of that. Everything becomes. In the next chapter, he says this: I saw my brother as my enemy. And so, in that purport, Prabhupada writes, the real knowledge is revealed to the devotee when he comes to the right conclusion about the life by the grace of the Lord. Our creation of friends and enemies within this material world is something like dreaming at night. In dreams, we create so many things out of various impressions in the subconscious mind, but all creations are simply temporary and unreal. So, last week, our family, we traveled to a beach in the East Coast, and we were there, and by the water, and it was so, these purports of Bhagavatam, they are so poetic, but we can really see them come to life when we go look out in the nature. Like there is this. Um like we hear, right, like the bubbles, they when you see the ocean come, you see the bubbles are coming, they form certain patterns. You see some things also, just like in the sky we might see a dragon in the cloud. We see some patterns forming, and when the waves go back, those patterns are crushed, and when it comes back again, some other pattern is formed. So, actually, the same thing is spoken of in Chitraketu's pastimes. Prabhupada writes very vividly. He says, this king Harsha Shoka, when he was born, the king could have thought, Chitraketu could have thought, this child who is born to me, he could have thought, like Chitraketu could have thought, he probably was an enemy in my last life. He's now appeared as my son, and he is, by dying prematurely, he is causing me pain again. So we might see somebody as our son, we might see somebody as our relative, we may see somebody as our enemy, we may see somebody as our friend. But the reality is that all of that is illusorily put up together. They are shockingly, but in a true sense, they come together in a temporary way, and it's uh, it's very humbling to see that I'm far away from that realization, but that's the reality, that we see ourselves as this body, and we see something as mine and something as not my favorite. And that was the position of King Uttanapada. And starting tomorrow onwards, I think we'll get into the nectarian pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj, what happens to him. So I'll pause here. If you have any thoughts, please do share. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare
So
Krishna.
nice to hear from you, Dhanvat Pranam.
Dhanavad
Yeah,
Pranam.
you said it is only 2 slokas, but there is a lot to learn about hatred and all these things, right? How the queens are different for the king himself, and I remember a story from my childhood while listening to your class today. We used to get a monthly called Chandamama book, where we have one story of Bhagavatam in one of those middle pages. So it comes with the pictures also. So in that it says how the queen is abandoned and she has a different place to live also. And once the Uttanapada, he went um, to the forest for hunting or something, and he found a sage there. And the sage gives him a mango. Uh, and if you give to your queen, she will get a wonderful boy. And she will have a boy or something for the kids because he doesn't have kids at that time. So while coming back in that story, he said it was raining heavily and he couldn't go to the palace and he has to stop in between in this Suniti's place. And but he didn't give that mango to her because Suruchi is the favorite queen, and he gives the mango to the Suruchi. And there is a servant maid of Suruchi in that building, right, in the queen's place, and she saves that seed of mango and gives to Suniti. So there are pictures like I remember those pictures how the servant maid secretly gets that seed of mango and gives it to Suniti, and Suniti will eat that one, grinding the seed and have the pulp that is there to the seed. So both queens get kids, but Uttanabada, um, so because of the seed, Dhruva was born, and Uttama was born from the mango fruit. That's what they say. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's not there in this Bhagavatam,
yeah,
but
that is
sure,
not in
maybe
this
it's there in some other.
Bhagavatam, but yeah. So the
Yeah.
same mango he shared, but because of his love to Suruchi, he gives the fruit to his younger wife. But because of the servant maid,
Mm,
she is uh, just takes that seed to Suniti.
thank you, Madhuri.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble
Hare Krishna.
obeisances. Our glories to Guru Maharaj, La Prabhupada. Mataji, thank you for bringing out so many, relating it to so many other personalities, wonderful personalities. Prahlad Maharaj's teachings, Chitraketu's experiences. And I'm actually starting to read Bhagavad Gita with a new group of people. And, that relation, our likes and dislikes and our hatred and love that Arjuna talks about in the first chapter, his swajan, right, his own people.
Mm,
I
mm,
mean, that's exactly
mm.
the that's exactly, how we are, our likes and dislikes and hatred and, is kind of molded as well, right? I mean, and kind of come back to that. And like you talked about the patterns on the sand, it keeps changing. The other example is like straw in the river. It
Yeah.
goes, collects together and then moves apart. And yet we pay so much attention to our own blood and skin relationship.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that is, I mean, every time it's so provoking, that's, that whole relationship. Actually, it is with the root, which is Krishna. And
Yeah.
so, thank you, Mataji. Thank you.
And very sobering. It's very sobering
So
that,
sobering.
especially that Chitraketu.
Mhm.
Yeah. Prabhupada writes in that purport, that child could have been your enemy in the past
Yes.
life, and now you're adoring him as your son.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and it's just a flash, in
Very,
eternity. Yeah, and yet we give
very.
so much importance to that relationship. Yeah. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you. I know, like you said about Arjuna, Swajana, Dhritarashtra says that also, right? What did my
Yeah.
sons and the Pandavas do? Prabhupada writes in that purport. He's calling his own sons as,
Yes.
the
My
rightful
sons.
heir,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah. My
Yeah.
sons and the sons
Mamakaha
of Pandu.
Pandavachaiva.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, of course, Dhritarashtra, we kind of set aside as a totally different category, and, Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra. But even Arjun felt that, of course, he was bewildered purposely
Yeah.
by Krishna. We know that. But just listening to him speak, it's like he says Svajana, Svajana, Svajana so many times.
Mhm. Nice. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, I think we are a couple of minutes over the hour. If there's no more comments, we'll end here. वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितनां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. अनंतकोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय. ग्रंथराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय.
Jai.